Hi, I'm Chrissy and I'm here with Jamie. Today we'll be discussing free trade agreement reconciliation, and welcome to Trade Buzz. Jamie, what is FTA reconciliation and why do companies use it?
Well, we chatted in a previous Trade Buzz on value reconciliation, which is where, you're not sure what the value is, so you get a chance to correct it at a later date. For this is for a free trade agreement reconciliation, which is basically the same concept. You're not really sure that the goods that you're bringing in actually qualify for a particular free trade agreement. And so what the customs allow you to do is flag that transaction, that there might be a free trade agreement applicable on this particular transaction, and it gives you a year to go in and confirm that and correct that with customs.
That makes sense. And what are the most common challenges that companies face with FTA reconciliation?
I think what most of the problem is that supplier certifications can oftentimes be incomplete or actually not be accurate. So that's one of the biggest challenges, is that companies will just say, oh, well, this product was made in X country, therefore it meets the terms of that agreement. And that isn't necessarily the case. There are very strict and rigid rules that have to be followed, either with tariff shift or with some sort of evaluation methodology that needs to be done in order to qualify those goods. And also what customs expects is that you have all the documentation to support that. So if you say this was made here, what can you do to prove that that product was actually made there? Looking at financial records, purchase orders, even to the point of like manufacturing processes. And they sometimes even want to just see pictures of the facility to make sure that it really did exist. So keeping track of all that documentation can be a lot in order to maintain and be able to prove to customs if asked.
Absolutely. And what helps ensure a successful FTA reconciliation process?
It's going to be having strong process in place and having that documented so that everybody's following that to the letter. So that's kind of a general compliance issue overall, is that if you're going to do an activity, make sure that it's well documented and that everyone knows and that they've all been trained, and that you also provide very clear instructions to your suppliers that you expect to have a good solid free trade agreement, and also putting in your contract that in the event that customs ever asks for it, that they will work with you to get all the documentation, because that's another challenge in this reconciliation and the overall free trade agreement process, is you go to ask for that documentation, the supplier's like, I don't want to give it to you. So by putting that in your contract, it will help to make sure that you can actually get those documents. I know just from personal experience, worked with several really large retailers here in the US, and that were also operating in Mexico, and they were sending their goods down, giving them a free trade agreement, and then those authorities were coming in and auditing and finding that they weren't really certain that they actually applied. So they asked for documentation, but they wanted it in a very tight timeline. Usually customs only gives you 30 days to respond. Wow. And if you don't have all that in advance and prepared, and you're going after the fact trying to attain it, you might miss that window and see yourself in a really difficult situation. So make sure that you're on top of it, well trained, well documented, and you should be fine.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today, and thank you for joining Trade Buzz.
Well, thank you, and stay vigilant.